This week at Starbase, work continues on the tank farm expansion and Pad B infrastructure. Raptors are installed on Ship 35. Demolition continues at the build site, and the Pad A launch tower performs a launch and catch simulation. Now let's dig into this week's update. By Friday morning, workers were nearly finished demolishing the Stargate building, with only the elevator shaft with the Stargate lettering left to go. Sparks showered down from the high bay as workers continue to demolish the structure. Once Stargate and the high bay are gone, work will begin on Gigabay. Several boom segments were delivered for SpaceX's LR-11000. The crane is being reconfigured for a heavy lift at the launch site, making use of rented boom components, while the SpaceX-owned parts are refurbished. The boom parts have been worn out by launch debris and from spending the past few years in the salty air of Starbase, Texas. One of the elevator shaft tracks sections was removed from the high bay, clearing the way to take down more of the walls. The first pump truck packed up after 8 hours of placing concrete for the southeast flame trench ramp. The second truck finished a few minutes later, wrapping up its work along the tower side of the trench. One half of the Pad B flame diverter assembly was repositioned at Sanchez in preparation for the move to the launch site. Another wall section was removed from high bay and lowered to the ground to be cut up for scrap. Another section of deluge plumbing pipe was delivered to the launch site for Pad B. The chopsticks at Pad B were slewed, checking part of their range of movement before being returned to their starting position. The Stargate elevator shaft was torn down in the evening, completing demolition of the structure. The two halves of the flame diverter bucket began their journey to the launch site in the evening and arrived at the complex on Saturday morning. These large water-cooled pipe segments will resist and redirect the launch exhaust from Super Heavy, keeping it away from the launch site's infrastructure. The two gaps in the pipe assemblies are the lifting points for the crane. After the sun rose, the first of the two diverter sections was lifted off the transporter and placed over the flame trench. Once it was in position, the diverter was lowered into the trench and set down on the support structures inside. The second half of the flame diverter system was installed a few hours later. The installation process was a mirror image of the first half, with the diverter being placed over the trench and lowered inside. Over at the pumping station, the fifth liquid oxygen pump motor was put in place. The sump for pump 6 was installed about an hour later. The second weir pipe for Pad B's deluge system was moved to the crane for its installation rigging. The pipe was then installed at the pad. The liquid oxygen pump unit number 6 was lifted into place inside the pumping station. Sea level and vacuum Raptor engines were spotted inside Megabay 2 before its door closed, to be installed on Ship 35. Daybreak on Sunday revealed a checkerboard pattern of holes cut into the cladding on high bay, while workers continue to cut more pieces out of the wall. Peeking through the door into Megabay 2, another vacuum Raptor was spotted for Ship 35. The door was then closed for installation. A Block 2 ship lifter was brought inside Megabay 2 and rigged up to the overhead crane. The patchwork of black ablative heat shield material and white ceramic wool was visible on the back side of Ship 36. The Pad A launch tower was put through a test on Monday. Starting with the ship quick disconnect retraction, the chopsticks were raised up to the base of the arm. The catch arms were then swung around before being raised up to their launch position. The arms were then set in the catch position with the landing rails up. The chopsticks' full range of motion were checked, and they performed a simulated booster catch. Once the test was over, the arms were swung left and lowered to the stop block at the base of the tower. Over at the build site, individual panels were cut away from the high base corner, lightening the structure and reducing wind loads for when it's lowered down. Over at the pumping station, the sump for liquid oxygen pump 7 was installed. Excavators made quick work of the Stargate building's debris. The material was sorted into piles and then placed in dumpsters. The filled dumpsters were then taken off site for recycling and disposal. Booster 17 was rolled back to the build site on Tuesday after finishing up its test campaign at the Massey outpost. Once the booster reached the front gates, it was brought in and staged outside of Megabay 1. Starship 37's aft section was brought out of Star Factory and moved into Megabay 2. Ship 36 was moved off the center stand at some point and set down on a different stand inside the bay. As excavators continued to clean up all the metal debris, Booster 17 was moved into Mega Bay 1. The front walkway, window, and balcony section were cut and lifted away from the high bay. The 8th and 9th liquid oxygen pump sumps were lifted into place at the pumping station, leaving just 3 pumps and 4 motors left to install. The intake control valve was lifted off the supply skid for liquid oxygen pump 4 ahead of its replacement. Booster 17 didn't stay in Mega Bay 1 for long. It was rolled out and set up Highway 4, taking the long path to the rocket garden through the most distant Sanchez gate. While the booster was moving, the booster test stand was also sent to the Sanchez site. The replacement control valve for Pump 4 was installed in the evening. Joining the Pump 4 control valve, the long absent valve for Pump 3 was installed after sunrise on Wednesday morning. Back at the build site, the hot stage adapter was lifted up for installation on Booster 14 inside of Mega Bay 1. A concrete pump truck began setting up near the liquid oxygen pumps on Thursday morning. With the truck set up, workers began filling the forms for the wall extension between Highway 4 and the pumping station. Several new LED explosion-proof light fixtures are being installed at the tank farm. With the SpaceX crane's derrick raised and the boom heel installed, workers began installing the boom segments and managed to put 4 in place by the end of the day. With that, workers had a 30-minute notice to clear Pad B and the flame trench for chopstick testing. And 30 minutes later, testing of the Pad B chopsticks began as they swung out and the arms were slewed to check and characterize their behavior. This week at the Cape saw the launch of 2 Starlink missions, Group 12-17 and 6-73. Bob and Doug both returned to port with fairing halves, while Signet Lightning brought back a short follow gravitas with Booster 1083, and Bob towed home Just Read the Instructions with Booster 1067. Demolition continued on the old gantry crane to clear up more space for other activities at the busy port. Both of the boosters were unloaded from the landing ships at the Port Canaveral docks for leg stowage. Booster 1083 was the only booster to finish its stay at the docks and was brought back to Roberts Road for refurbishment. And there you have it, another SpaceX and Starbase weekly update brought to you by LabPadre. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button if you haven't already, guys, and we'll see you next week. Thanks for watching. LabPadre out.